So and good morning to our Exit Strategies radio show family. Guys, thank y'all so much for listening. So, guys, today we are super duper excited. We have with us an amazing guest who is going to drop some real jewels, some real nuggets, who is going to give you some insight on quote unquote the other side, if you will. We have been on this amazing streak of having the best, and we are not breaking it today. So, guys, I'm super duper excited to introduce to you Ed Mathews with Clark Street Capital. Ed, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm great, Corwin. How are you doing, sir? Good to see
I
you.
am phenomenal. I'm
Excellent.
phenomenal.
Excellent.
So, for our listeners, guys, just a little bit of a prep. Ed and I, we have determined we are kindred spirits. I am
Indeed.
bald with a beard. He is clean shaven with a lot of hair. And in turn, we believe what we believe, and he's going to share some of his beliefs with us today.
Love
So,
that.
if you don't mind, Ed, give our listeners kind of the 30,000 foot view of who you are and who Clark Street Capital is.
Okay, cool. So, Corwin, thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you today. It's really good to see you, my friend. So, in terms of who I am and why am I here, I spent about 25 years in Silicon Valley working for companies that pretty much none of the people in this audience have ever heard of, other than DocuSign, which was my last company.
Okay.
So that one rings a bell, right? But
Yeah.
the rest, no one knows who Coupa and Ariba and all those others are. But that's okay. The folks that bought the software know who they are. And I spent about 25 years there. I started investing in real estate back in 2010, late 2010, early 2011, as a side hustle, just to start to build up an extra stream of revenue. And so I bought a 4-family here in Connecticut. I'm based in Connecticut. And so I bought a 4-family on Clark Street in East Hartford. And then I would flip a couple of houses and buy another one, and flip another couple of houses and buy another multi. And, over the course of about 7, almost 8 years, we built up a nice portfolio that replaced our monthly income, needs. And so instead of traveling 150, 200 nights a year, I resigned from corporate America and decided to do this full time. And so I've been doing that since February it's actually coming up on the 5-year anniversary, February of 2018. And so far, so good.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It was a blessing and a curse, right? Because, my wife, my wife, Patricia, who I'm very fond of, and I like to think she's very fond of me. She tells me she is, so that's good. She is my person. And so I wanted to, be around, especially for our daughters who were teenagers then. My oldest was just getting into high school, and my youngest was just getting into middle school. And, that's when little girls need their dads around. So, the timing couldn't have been better. And then I started, I was working from home. I started following my wife around the house, and she's like, "You need to go get an office because you're driving me crazy." And so, that's how I got here. So Clark Street Properties evolved into Clark Street Capital. So Clark Street Properties was my business focused on, small multis, like I said. And, my friends from Silicon Valley and friends and family elsewhere were all like, "Hey, we want to invest in you." And I said, "Yeah, let me go, break stuff and figure out business systems," because it was just a side hustle. It wasn't actually a business to invest in at that point. And, let me go break stuff and figure out, how to actually build a business, build a team, build systems, put technology in place and all that. And so I spent, a couple of years doing that. And then as we started to kind of turn the page and get into larger projects, that's when I felt confident and could look somebody in the eye and tell them, they invest in our company, we actually have our act together and we can serve them well, help grow their in addition to ours. So that happened probably about 18 months ago. And so we became Clark Street Capital, and now we're a syndicator and soon to be a private equity fund holder.
Awesome.
And also are an operator. So we not only do we buy the buildings, but we operate the buildings under Clark Street Management, our property management arm. And I've got a team of 7, 8 people now globally, and things are going well. And I get to go do my dream every morning when I wake up, which is really nice.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So congratulations, Ed, on that growth. Sometimes this is what makes this conversation very, very, very enlightening, which is, sometimes we have tunnel vision. I think you and I kind of talked about this
Yep.
before, but we have tunnel vision. So when our listeners, as they're thinking about potentially real estate investing, they're looking at it from that singular standpoint of, well, they just want to buy a rental, or they just want to try to do a flip, or what have you, where you've taken that singular concept and you have amplified it to now be Clark Street Capital. That is amazing. I know that was a heck of a journey. I know it was. It sounds exciting.
Yeah, I told my father told me, my father, who's now 80, when I told him that I was leaving, he said, you're out of your ever loving. Actually, he didn't say ever loving, but this is a family show, so I'll keep it. He said, you're out of your ever loving mind. And I said, quite frankly, it's either going to be a, tremendous success, or a cautionary tale that my descendants will tell about great grandpappy who blew the family fortune and lit the entire family on fire. It'll be one of the two. So far.
I love it. I love it. That's interesting that you should, put it in that. But you know what? That also goes to generational. That's a conversation. Sometimes people are hindered from generational or traditions.
Norms
It
traditions.
was
Absolutely.
exactly. It was normal that people went and worked in this particular place for 20, 30, 40 years, and then retired. They got a little retirement party, got a little Timex watch, and that was it, and they were gone. But now this is being normalized for people to step out of corporate America and define seemingly. I mean, granted, we know that you had to probably dance to some different beats, but similarly, to walk over and essentially put together your own band, so eventually you could march to your own beat, so to speak.
Right on. It's so true that back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, perhaps even the 80s, security meant I had a W-2 job. I went to work. I worked 40 hours a week. I got my weekends. And, on Monday morning, I went back at 8 a.m. and I worked until 6, and I got an hour for lunch, and 40 years of that. And then when you got to the end of 40 years, you get to go retire and hit a white golf ball, or go fishing, or however you want to spend the last 10, 15, 20 years of your life. For me, security, the idea of being secure with someone else holding domain over my employment and thus my income was very scary for me, right? And I worked for some amazing people who I count as mentors and friends today. But nevertheless, I was beholden to some power up in some office in some corner of some office building that they liked me and respected what I was doing and the value that I was bringing to the company. The second that didn't happen, I was gone, right? I was easy to get rid of a guy. And so, where I saw security was, we were talking about earlier, eating what you kill, right? I'm highly confident that I can produce enough, income on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year perspective that I can feed my family. And so that's really important to me. And so I don't need that boss in the office tower. It doesn't matter if he or she likes me or not, because I no longer work for them. And so it's a very different perspective. My dad's generation, baby boomers, and mine being a Gen Xer, I guess Gen X, right? Something like that.
I don't know. I get that all messed up.
Yeah. The next generation after boomers, but whatever that is.
Exactly. And it's interesting. So, Ed, if you had to, and what you just talked about, I mean, I literally, you just define who an entrepreneur truly is. A lot of people like to fancy or call themselves or put a title on being an entrepreneur, but entrepreneurs are who you just described. They keep hitting the ceiling and they're uncomfortable. And a lot of people, quote unquote, step out on entrepreneurship when they like a ceiling. They're okay with it, and they don't endeavor to go beyond, which is interesting. But if you had to say something or give something to our listeners as far as a thought process in endeavoring to get into real estate investing, what would you tell them to start with?
So I'm an avid reader, and I consume a lot of information on a daily basis. Because the Red Sox up here are terrible, so I don't have any baseball to read about. So I decided to, focus on getting smarter instead. And I'm a big fan of a marketing guy. His name is Russell Brunson. He's absolutely brilliant. And if you haven't read his books, you should. And I'm not friends with him or anything like that. It's not a plug. I'm just telling you this worked for me. one of the things that he said in one of his books, I think it was his first book, .com Secrets. It was that, he wakes up every Monday morning thinking, how can I give myself a raise this week? You think about that, right? So that tells me two things. One, he, and now because I manage myself this way as well, I'm not okay with satisfactory or status quo, right? So because if I can give myself a 1% raise this week and do it again next week and do it again the week after that, and consistently give myself even a 1/10 of 1% raise every day for the 240 some odd days that I work during the year, at the end of the year, you've given yourself a gigantic raise, right? And that can be working harder. It can be working smarter. It can be, going the extra mile for a client. It can be coming up with a new product or a new service that is tangentially related to what you already do and offering that to your clients and, potentially gaining new business. But it's a process, right? And it's a gradual process. It's, you read about these, overnight successes. And, when you really delve into a lot of these stories, it took them 10, 15 years of hard work to become an overnight success. Right. And so I don't know any other way to do it than to work hard and to work smart. And actually, now that I'm older, I'm in my early 50s, I try really hard to work smarter than harder. Because I'm old. but my brain's still as crisp as it was when I was 20, and my body's still as healthy as it was when I was 20. But I value my time differently than I did back in my 20s. In that I look at highest and best use, like where can I add the most value on Monday to my business, to my residents, to my investors, to the brokers I work with, and the partners that we work with. How can I add the most value? And that switch, along with the idea of, how can I give myself a raise this week, has really pushed our business forward. Two simple concepts, right? But they've had a profound impact on the growth of our business. So,
it's interesting you to touch on that as far as value. Oftentimes people seek to create income prior to providing value, and that doesn't work. So, you want to move the needle, and it's interesting if you think about it, income directly relates to the value that you provide. Yep. I mean, it's really like the IV. If you put the two letters together, that nourishment, healing, I mean, all kind of things can kind of come from that, but it's a similar formula. Again, income is in direct proportion to the value that you provide to the consumer. So if you're helping people to establish themselves, to build, to create and generate wealth by investing money for them in your business, in real estate, look at you provided a tremendous value to a potential, to a consumer. That's massive, my man. That's massive. So you work in the multifamily, primarily multifamily. Yeah. You had to start in residential. And it's interesting, and I'll share this brief, Ed. I've had a few guests on recently that operate in the self-storage space. And we jokingly had a conversation about you get rid of toilets, or you get rid of people and you keep their stuff. Yeah. But you still got the people. So I still have the humans, So you invest in primarily what type of asset? Let's talk about that.
Small to medium-sized multifamily. And so I tell people that we buy, I'm trying to think of a clean way to say this. We buy dilapidated, crappy apartment buildings from landlords who aren't very good at their jobs, right?
Okay.
And so... And really because, I had gotten involved in flipping business. So from a construction perspective, I've seen a lot, right? I can't say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot. And so very little really freaks me out when we see a building that's kind of broken down. What it does though, it actually makes me angry. And so, because I think that, look, the people that live in the buildings that we acquire, they're good, hardworking people, right? They crank your wrench to fix your car. They pour your coffee at the local diner. They check you out at Target or Walmart, right? These are hardworking people, and that's not their only job. They probably have two or three, right? And so the thing that really kind of focused me on, in my vernacular, it's called C-class buildings, is that I think, in fact, I know, I don't even think it anymore. I have the data to back me up, that if you acquire a building, you make it clean and safe, Then you make it beautiful so that people are proud to live there. They'll stay long. And on top of that, if you provide them with Class A service, in other words, if Corwin, you live in a Class A building and I live in a Class C building, my job as the property owner, asset manager, all of that is to make sure that you get the same treatment I get, right? Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, whatever, right? And what I mean by that is if you have a question, you call the office, there's a human being on the other end that will answer your question. If you hop on our platform, our management platform, and say, I've got something that's broken, can you come fix it? You get a phone call that day. And in most cases, my guy's out there that day to fix it. And then the next day you get a phone call back saying, hey, is everything okay? Did we fix it right? It's just a matter of respect, right? And so here's what I know. The average tenant in state of Connecticut, it lives in the same apartment for about 16 months on average, right? Class C. Our residents, and note the difference, right? I don't call them tenants. They aren't tenants. They're residents. They live in a home that we provide, right? They tend to live in our apartments, 3+ years. It's actually 3.1 years, as a matter of fact. So what that does for the resident is they have a place they can call home for a long, long time. And they can grow their home. They can grow their families there, and they can live their lives and live it well, right? And so what that does for us and me and our investors is that, vacancy and turnover are two of the most expensive things on my CapEx line items. And I know that on average, if I have to go in and fix stuff and paint stuff and, over the course of like every year, it's going to cost me anywhere from $700 to $2,500 just to fix the stuff. And that doesn't a lost revenue opportunity because no one's living in the apartment while we're throwing paint around, right? Or fixing cabinets or replacing a toilet or whatever. And so not only do our residents treat our buildings well with respect, which tells us, and they stay longer as well. So even when they move out, a lot of the folks that, live in our places, either, their families are growing and they run out of space. So they move into a bigger place, so they go buy a house or whatever. But the fact is that not only have they stayed longer, so I've skipped over one, possibly two cost items in terms of having to turn that unit over. But when they leave, all I'm doing is typically painting it, right? I have to fix a light fixture or something like that, but it's by no means wrecked, right? I mean, it's just, they leave it as well as they found it. And, because there's a mutual respect there, right? We understand that that's their home. And our job is to provide, a clean and safe place where they can be proud to make their home. And that, I'll hop off my soapbox, but that's one of the things that makes me really angry about this business is that most people don't understand. And I've had this debate with other property owners, landlords, who I say with derision, who think that squeezing every penny out of every single tenant is the way to make money. I couldn't disagree more, and I've got the data to prove it.
So I'm consulting for a client who essentially what you're talking about. On top of that, I have another that we're engaged with that is in pursuit of some properties that's going to be the same thing. And my conversation with them, Ed, was exactly what you said. You want to create an environment that people want to live in. And oftentimes what happens is they get disenfranchised by what has been happening. And then you have to go through this process to get the ones who are willing to essentially raise their level of standard, if you will, of living to do so. And the ones who won't, those are the ones you get rid of so that you can improve the property. It's necessary at times. If people are not keeping their units clean, if they're not keeping up the exterior of the property, if they're throwing trash on the ground in the complex, those are the people that you need to get rid of. They need to go, so that way your property functions better. And in turn, what you'll see with that is that the residents who do want a better standard of living, they will see that, they'll recognize that, understand there's change going on, and they will in turn improve. They will take better care of the property for you. And that leaves you less to have to do as far as maintenance and all that stuff, because they'll make an effort to better take care of the property.
I'm living proof of that exact model. Yeah, 100% agree with it.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the residents have such a bad relationship with the building that it doesn't matter whether it's me or, the guy or gal that owned the building beforehand. We're all thrown into the same bucket. And I understand why. I'm atypical. And the only way I can prove I'm atypical is if you live in the building and let me prove it. Right. And, some do, some don't. I mean, in all honesty, when we acquire a building, we usually lose 25 to 50% of the residents over the first year or two. And, part of it is rules. Most of the buildings we own are older buildings, so we don't allow smoking in the building because not everybody. Yep. And if you smoke in Unit A, Unit B gets your secondhand smoke. So that's not fair to them. It's garbage stuff, and we have a very simple relationship. We're going to provide you a clean and safe place where you can be proud to live. You got to pay, and you got to you got to treat your fellow residents with respect. And most people are great with that. Some people aren't. They got to go. That's okay too.
Exactly. So you hit it. I mean, look, boom, boom, boom. Kindred spirits, my man. Kindred spirits. For real.
I agree.
So Ed, tell our listeners where they can, reach out to you. Because inevitably they're going to have questions about, hey, what is this? That kind of thing. Where can people get in contact with you?
So I tell everybody I'm a cheap date. And what that means is either virtually or just ask my wife, she'll tell you. I'm a cheap date in that I will spend 15, 20 minutes with anybody to answer any questions. In fact, I'm going to start doing, Facebook Lives and things like that. So you can reach us at Clark ST Capital, pretty much everywhere, right? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We just launched a YouTube channel about a month and a half ago. You can also listen to our podcast, The Real Estate Underground, which is on every, Apple and Spotify and all that. Our job there is to kind of help you figure out where in the real estate world you might fit and give you a couple of gold nuggets to think about and help you kind of either take advantage of opportunities or hop over mistakes that, me or one of our guests made and, help you avoid those. And as far as the cheap date thing goes, hit me up on any of those social media. If I don't respond, you can also go to our website at clarkst.com and submit a form. I read every single one of them. I try to read every single comment on social media. And if I can help, if I can add value, fortunately, I've had several mentors who have been awfully good to me. And, my way of paying them back is by doing the same thing for other folks that I meet along the way. So, those are probably the best ways to reach me.
Awesome. Well, Ed, thank you so much for being on the show. For our listeners, guys, y'all got it. Y'all have had an amazing encounter today with Ed Mathews with Clark Street Capital. He is the guy, and he has it together. So y'all please reach out to him and let him provide you some additional insight. Again, Ed, thank you for being a part of the Exit Strategies Radio Show family, my man.
Truly my pleasure, Corwin. Thanks. Good to see you, buddy.
Awesome. So listeners, as we close out today's show, y'all know what I tell y'all, and I'm going to say it, and y'all going to get it because y'all better listen to it. Y'all better believe it because I know that I do. And that is number one, that I love you. Number two, I love you. Number three, I love you. And we're going to see you guys out there in those streets.